There's something distinct about individuals who spent their childhood during the 1960s. Perhaps it's the way they navigate crisis without collapsing. Perhaps it's how they handle uncertainty with unusual composure. Or maybe it's that particular combination of hope and realism that seems woven into their character. The 1960s didn't merely influence a generation. It created a specific psychological framework that researchers are only beginning to comprehend. Let's begin with something that shaped 1960s childhoods in ways most people overlook. Imagine being 6 years old, and every morning at school you practice something called duck and cover drills. The teacher signals and you crawl beneath your desk, tucking your head between your knees, protecting yourself from an imaginary nuclear explosion. You didn't fully grasp what nuclear war meant, but you understood enough. Somewhere out there, weapons existed that could end everything. The world your parents created could vanish instantly. That desk you hid under probably wouldn't protect you from anything real. This wasn't trauma in the conventional sense. It was something more complex. You learned to balance two opposing realities at once. The world might end tomorrow, yet you still need to complete tonight's homework. Psychologists describe this as productive cognitive dissonance. For 1960s children, it was simply ordinary life. What's extraordinary is that instead of producing anxious, paralyzed adults, this constant awareness of existential threat created something unexpected. People who developed an unusual relationship with uncertainty. When you've prepared for apocalypse before your 7th birthday, everyday problems lose their power to terrify you. Job loss becomes manageable because at least it's not nuclear war. Relationship troubles feel survivable because the world is still standing. This generation learned early that worrying about uncontrollable things wastes precious energy. They developed what researchers recognize as sophisticated psychological triage, an ability to categorize problems into things they could influence and things they needed to accept, not from reading self-help books, but from absorbing it during those drills. Now consider a Sunday evening in February 1964. You're in your living room with your family gathered around the television, and 4 young men from Liverpool appear on a variety show. The audience screaming is so loud you barely hear the music. Your older sister is crying. Your parents look confused and slightly alarmed. But you're witnessing something you lack words for yet: the birth of a cultural earthquake. This musical phenomenon didn't just change entertainment. It demonstrated to an entire generation that the world could transform overnight, that 4 ordinary people could shake cultural foundations, that what seemed permanent could become obsolete during a single television broadcast. This was formative beyond music preferences. 1960s children learned early that change doesn't happen slowly across generations. It can happen now, immediately. This created adults who aren't threatened by disruption the way other generations often are. They've witnessed entire cultural landscapes shift beneath them and survived. They understand that what seems revolutionary today becomes normal tomorrow, and what seems permanent might disappear by next year. But here's the psychological complexity. While they witnessed radical change, they also experienced assassination after assassination. 3 major leaders cut down within 5 years, their heroes eliminated, their hopes shattered on live television. They learned that progress isn't linear, that good doesn't always triumph, that hope and tragedy coexist permanently in human experience. This combination of revolutionary optimism tempered by repeated loss created a specific psychological profile. People who believe change is possible but aren't naive about the costs, who can hope without being foolish, who understand that fighting for something better doesn't guarantee you'll live to see it. This isn't cynicism. It's wisdom purchased at enormous cost. Let's shift to something more intimate. Picture being 8 years old when your mother hands you coins and sends you to the corner store alone. You walk there yourself, navigate streets, choose what you want, hand over money, count your change, and walk home. This wasn't special privilege. This was normal. Children in the 1960s handled real currency from early ages. Not plastic cards making numbers appear on screens, but actual coins with weight in your pocket, bills you could fold and unfold. You learned that money was finite because you watched it disappear from your hand as you spent it. This physical relationship with currency created neural pathways modern children don't develop. You understood cause and effect viscerally. Spend these coins on candy and they're gone. Save them and they accumulate. No abstract number on a screen disconnected you from transaction reality. What researchers call financial executive function, the ability to delay gratification, plan ahead, and understand true purchase costs, was being built through daily experience. They weren't learning about money. They were feeling it slip through fingers or accumulate in piggy banks. The independence extended beyond the corner store. Picture 7:30 in the morning and you're walking to school. You're 6, maybe 7 years old. No parent beside you, no adult watching from a distance. Just you, books tucked under your arm because backpacks aren't common yet, and the route you've memorized through the neighborhood. You pass the house with the aggressive dog and cross to the other side. You wave to the neighbor always tending her garden. You meet the kids from down the street at the corner and walk together. This daily journey wasn't merely transportation, it was education. You learned to read your environment, notice when something seemed different or wrong. You developed internal maps not just of streets, but of social landscapes. Which adults were friendly, which houses to avoid, which routes were safe. Neuroscientists have discovered that autonomous navigation in childhood develops spatial reasoning, risk assessment, and self-reliance in ways that being driven everywhere cannot replicate. Your brain was being sculpted by independence every morning before class even began. Now consider what happened when you got hurt, because you did get hurt. You fell off your bicycle racing down hills. You scraped knees climbing trees. You burned yourself on chemistry sets that would never pass modern safety standards. You got hit playing baseball without protective gear. And when you came home bleeding or bruised, your parents said something that would sound almost harsh today. You're fine. Go back outside. They had faith in you. Faith that you could handle discomfort. Faith that you would learn from experience. Faith that protecting you from every injury would cause more harm than the injuries themselves. This created people who don't catastrophize pain, who understand that hurt and damaged aren't the same, who can experience discomfort without believing something is fundamentally wrong. Modern psychology is finally catching up to what 1960s parents seemed to know instinctively. Children need to experience manageable adversity to develop what researchers call stress inoculation. Small doses of difficulty build psychological immunity, and 1960s children got plenty. But risks weren't only physical. Consider a Saturday afternoon when you're with your father, the family car hood open in the driveway. He hands you a wrench and shows you how the engine works. Or you're with your mother learning to use the sewing machine, the needle dangerously close to your small fingers. Children in the 1960s were trusted with real tools, real responsibility, real consequences. Toy ovens weren't just toys. They were genuine appliances hot enough to bake actual food. You could hurt yourself. That was the point. Learning caution around dangerous things was part of the education. This created adults who aren't intimidated by complexity, who assume they can figure out how things work, who don't automatically call experts for every problem. They grew up taking things apart and reassembling them. They learned that most machines and problems are less mysterious than they initially appear. Let's talk about waiting. Real waiting. The kind modern humans have almost forgotten. You want to see a new film? The theater has 1 or 2 screens. Films rotate weekly. You see what's playing or you wait. No streaming, no on-demand. If you miss it, you might never see it. You want to hear your favorite song? You sit by the radio hoping it plays. You can't skip to it. You wait. When it finally comes on, you scramble to record it, praying you catch the beginning. You want to know what happens next in your favorite show? You wait 7 days. The cliffhanger sits unresolved in your mind. No binge watching, no skipping ahead, just anticipation. This rhythm of wanting and waiting rewired an entire generation's brains. They developed extraordinary delay tolerance. They know that good things are worth waiting for. That anticipation is its own pleasure. That not everything needs immediate availability to have value. In a world of instant gratification, people who grew up in the 1960s carry this patience like a superpower. They don't panic when things take time. They don't need constant stimulation to feel content. They learned early that spaces between getting what you want aren't empty. They're full of imagination, anticipation, life itself. Now picture a summer evening in 1965. Streetlights have just turned on, which means maybe 10 more minutes before you need to be home. You're in someone's backyard with 8 neighborhood kids, finishing a game you invented that afternoon with rules only you understand. No adults present. No one supervising or refereeing. When someone argues about whether they were tagged, you work it out yourselves. When feelings get hurt, you figure out how to move forward. When younger kids can't keep up, you decide together whether to include them or send them home. Every social challenge is yours to navigate. This daily practice in human relations created something remarkable. People who can read a room instantly, who sense tension before it surfaces, who understand that what people say and what they mean are often different. They became students of human behavior not through formal study, but because their social survival depended on understanding it. You learned whose house you could enter without knocking and whose parents required formal greetings. You learned which kids would tell on you and which kept secrets. You learned how to be part of a group while maintaining your own identity. These skills weren't taught in classrooms. They were absorbed through thousands of hours of unsupervised social interaction, producing adults with high social intelligence. But some experiences cut deeper than social learning. Consider July 20th, 1969. You're sitting in front of the television watching grainy footage of something impossible. A man in a bulky suit is stepping onto the moon's surface. You're watching the boundary of human possibility expand in real time. Everything your parents said was impossible, everything the world claimed couldn't be done, is happening before your eyes. If we can walk on the moon, what else might be possible? This moment imprinted something profound, a belief, not just intellectual but visceral, that even the most daunting challenges can be overcome. That human determination can achieve the unthinkable. When 1960s children grew up to face their own obstacles, they carried this with them. They'd seen the impossible achieved. They'd watched humanity reach for the stars and touch them. That kind of moment doesn't fade, but that optimism existed alongside something darker. The 1960s were also when evening news broadcasts began showing footage from Vietnam. Real war, real death, real bodies. You'd eat dinner while the television showed things children today are shielded from. This exposure didn't traumatize them traditionally. It educated them. They understood from young ages that the world contained genuine horror, that safety wasn't guaranteed, that adults didn't always make good decisions, that authority could be catastrophically wrong. This created a generation with complicated relationships to institutions. They respect competence, but not mere credentials. They follow leaders who earn trust, not those who simply demand it. They learned young that questioning authority isn't disrespectful. Sometimes it's necessary. And yet, despite everything, despite assassinations and war footage and nuclear drills, despite watching heroes fall and hopes shatter, there's something almost defiant about the optimism of 1960s children. They also remember civil rights marches and landmark legislation. They remember watching the world change because people believed it could and refused to accept it couldn't. They hold both truths simultaneously. The world can be terrible, and the world can get better. Progress is possible, but not guaranteed. Hope is rational, but not naive. This psychological complexity, this ability to believe and doubt simultaneously, might be their most valuable inheritance. Consider a Saturday morning when television cartoons end. The programming stops or switches to something boring. You're faced with a choice. Sit in an empty house or find something to do. So you go outside. You walk to your friend's house and knock. You explore the creek behind the neighborhood. You build something from scrap wood. You lie in grass watching clouds. You get bored, then creative. This cycle of boredom leading to invention happened repeatedly throughout 1960s childhoods. No infinite scroll, no endless content, no algorithm designed to capture attention. Just time, empty time, waiting to be filled by whatever you could imagine. Neuroscientists have discovered that boredom activates the brain's default mode network, regions responsible for creativity and self-reflection. Every time a 1960s child stared at a ceiling or wandered through a summer afternoon, their brain was doing important work. These are adults who can sit in silence without discomfort, who don't need constant stimulation to feel okay, who can be alone with their thoughts because they've had so much practice. In an age of endless distraction, this capacity for stillness is increasingly rare and valuable. Now consider what happened when something went wrong. You failed a test. You lost a game. You didn't get picked for the team. And nobody rushed in to fix your feelings. Nobody gave you a participation trophy. Nobody pretended you won when you clearly lost. You experienced the full weight of disappointment or failure. Then something remarkable occurred. You survived it. The world didn't end. The feeling passed. And you learned something invaluable. You can handle more than you think. This wasn't cruelty disguised as character building. It was reality. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes things don't go your way. And there's nothing anyone can do except help you get back up. 1960s children got this lesson early and often. What psychologists call frustration tolerance was being built through countless small disappointments no one tried to prevent or fix. They learned that failure contains information, that losing teaches what winning never can, that resilience isn't the absence of struggle, but the capacity to keep going despite it. These people carry something the modern world desperately needs. They remember what it felt like to be trusted, to be left alone, to figure things out without someone watching over their shoulder. They remember when childhood was a little dangerous and a lot free. They're living proof that resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. That competence comes from practice, not protection. That the best gift isn't a smooth path, but confidence to handle whatever comes. In a world of growing anxiety, they stand as evidence of another way. Not a perfect way, not without costs, but a way that produced people who can weather storms, adapt to change, and maintain hope even when hope seems naive. They grew up in a decade of assassinations and moon landings, of cultural earthquakes and nuclear fears, of unprecedented freedom and unimaginable loss. And somehow, maybe because of all of it, they learned to hold it all. The hope and the horror, the joy and the grief, the certainty that things can get better, and the knowledge that they might not. That's the psychology of people who grew up in the 1960s, and it's a psychology we might all benefit from understanding better.